George in Chicago. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hello, Tom.
Hey.
Thanks for taking my call. I had a question I wanted to address to Senator Sanders, and hopefully somebody in his office is listening to the show.
Good.
Two examples of the deterioration of broadcasting in the last 24 hours. Yesterday evening on the ABC national news, they reported on the gentleman who landed his gyrocopter on the Capitol lawn. And they did not mention once what his purpose was, to deliver 535 letters to all the senators and congressmen about his dismay at the state of campaign financing.
Right.
The thread that ran through was one of danger and threat and terrorism. If this guy can do it, terrorists could do it.
Right.
But nothing about the enormous damage that has been done and continues to be done by our campaign financing. Second example, earlier today on NPR, they did a very brief and very shallow report on the TPP and interviewed some obscure academic from England on the subject, and England's not even a party to these negotiations, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a kind of a frothy, chit-chatty report, and I just thought, NPR is like totally captive to its corporate donors. You can't get good news out of networks or NPR anymore. And then Senator Sanders mentioned that he's grateful for your show because it gives him a platform to speak on these issues. I would just like to suggest to the senator and advocate to the Democrats that in the next session, they have to introduce a bill that restores the public service requirements to broadcasting, because as long as the sources of news for most of our people are so corporate-oriented, we're not going to make much progress.
Right. And we've been moving more and more in that direction with public radio. Public radio has gone from being 100% funded by the federal government in the 1960s when Lyndon Johnson created it to 7% last year. And, what's making up the difference is the gas industry, the oil industry, the defense industry, all, the lobbyists here in D.C., here, all lobbying firms, and, all these other companies that want to make sure that NPR does not do any investigative journalism that looks bad on them. It's really not a good thing. So I can't speak for Bernie, but I think that we need to go back to ownership rules that the FCC used to have that limited the amount of media that one family or one corporation could own in any individual city or across the United States. I think that that's a reasonable thing. I think it's good for local communities. I think it's good for business. It does introduce a certain amount of inefficiency into the system. And frankly, I've been thinking for years I ought to write a book called In Praise of Inefficiency. Frankly, I think that's a good thing. And I've seen the radio business when it was fragmented and local back in the 60s and 70s. I was in the radio business. And I see it now where, it's like basically 3 companies in radio own the country, 5 companies in television own the country. And is that a good thing for democracy? I don't think so. George, thank you for the call.